My get up and go has got up and gone. That's nothing unusual, really. I can say that about any day of the week. I think pretty much all of my videos at the moment, now that I've said that I'm going to be doing these more raw videos, are going to start with me yawning. Thank you. And telling you about how tired I am.
Hey folks, it's Finn. Welcome back, lovely people. Thank you so much for tuning in to another video, and if you are watching for the very first time, then a massive welcome, and also thank you for choosing one of my videos. This t-shirt today just about says it all. I best not pull it too tight because you'll see how sweaty I am. Charming, yes I know, but this is one of the joys of ME, or one of my joys with ME as well. And now that I'm filming raw, you just get to see it all. I'm having a very sweaty day because I'm in a bit of a crash, and crashes for me mean the sweats. Put me in a freezer right now, I would still sweat. So this is the topic of today's video. I'm going to be talking about crashing, or what is known as post-exertional malaise. Now this is a hallmark symptom of ME CFS, and post-exertional malaise is where we do something teeny tiny little amount of energy and we get a disproportionate payback that's delayed, hence post-exertional malaise. So this can be something as simple as having a shower, and then anything from a few hours to 72 hours later, you get the payback from that. So going for a walk, say I walk from here to my neighbour's 3 doors down. I feel fine, but then the day after, I'm completely exhausted from it. So it's disproportional payback that's delayed. This is something that you get with ME/CFS. It's a classic symptom. And now, one of the, it's not a treatment as such, it's a management of ME, is to use pacing to manage these crashes so that they don't happen. And that's not what I'm talking about in this video at all. I talked about that in other videos, different ways I manage my life. I use pacing techniques to avoid crashing and going into PEM. But what I want to talk about today is when it's worth having a crash. Finn, is it really ever worth having a crash? A crash is awful because what a crash is, post-exertional malaise, is actually not a really good term, in fact, because it's often called other things like post-exertional symptom exacerbation. Can never say that word, because it's basically where you get a flare-up of your fatigue and your other symptoms, whatever they may be. So for me, when I go into post-exertional malaise, symptom exacerbation, I get heightened fatigue, I get chronic migraine, I get extensive sweats, palpitations, pain, and all of these things. So why would I want them? I don't, of course. But I'm talking about this in reference to going to Glastonbury Festival. Now, you've all recently seen my Glastonbury Festival vlogs, and you know, we had an absolutely wonderful time. But it's now, I think, 6 weeks since we've been back, and I mean, I've not been as bad as I thought I might be, but I mean, bear in mind, we also moved and we had COVID as well. But it seems like it's only now that I'm really getting the full payback, crash payback, I often call it payback as well, from all of this. It's only been in the last kind of 10 days that I'm just noticing I'm getting worse and worse again. Now, I've often heard this term, hang on, I'll get it in a minute, it's in my head. I'm not going to edit this out because I've told you that I'm just going to show you how this is when things disappear out of my head. It's a word that we don't often hear, but I've heard other people. No, it's completely gone. There is a form of post-exertional malaise that is even more delayed. I've forgotten the word for it. It's completely gone. It's something to do with a rubber. It's not anything to do with a rubber. It's to do with... It's adding on all the time. It's adding and adding. Anyway, what I basically think is happening, because I've heard this term and it rings true for me, is I'm recovering from doing too much out of my energy comfort zone, but not recovering enough. So the fatigue's just adding up a little bit, and I'm not recovering quite enough each time I'm doing my recovering sessions, so that now I have this bigger crash. So basically, over these last 6 weeks in Glastonbury, I've just not spent enough time recovering, and now it's all just kind of catching up with me. I think that's what's going on. But anyway, the whole point... I told you this is what it's going to be like. Thank you so much, everybody, by the way, for your lovely comments on last week's video, where you just said that you're completely fine with me just uploading whatever is on my head each week that I want to talk about, in however it does or doesn't come out of my brain, and to just share honestly how it is without messing about with editing. Because honestly, because of how my brain is at the moment like this, where I forget so much, I'm having to do so much editing, and this has been stopping me. And you can see why, because I do forget things. I forget words, I have to go and look up stuff, and this takes me so much longer. But if I can just say, do you know what, it doesn't matter, just press record, see what happens, trust that you'll just like content, whatever, and put it up, it'll be easier. And I had so many lovely comments, so thank you very, 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 very much for that. It means a lot to me that not only do you want whatever content I put up, you're glad to see, but that so many people appreciate the more raw way of doing this, that you can really see what it's like to live with ME, CFS, and all the other things that come with it, because a lot of people just think it's being very tired. It's nothing like being very tired. Yes, fatigue is a huge part of it, but for me especially, one of the biggest things that come with it is brain fog, and that's not even a really accurate way to describe it. The cognitive difficulties that come with ME/CFS are devastating, especially when you're a public speaker and a vlogger and a writer, and your brain then just stops working. It forgets words. Sometimes I will just be in the middle of a sentence and my words will go, or I'll just stare into space and forget where I am and what I'm doing and what I'm here for. It's horrid. And I've now gone off on a complete tangent and forgot what I was saying. Welcome to Living with Fred. So anyway, why did I put myself in the position to go to Glastonbury Festival knowing that I was going to have this crash coming? This is what I want to talk about today. Well, because it isn't really that simple. Of course, in my day-to-day life, I'm doing everything I can to pace, to make sure that I am avoiding post-exertional malaise as much as I can, because as much as I avoid it, the more my body can recover, and that's what I need to do, because there is a chance of recovering from ME/CFS. At the very least, there's a chance of things improving. And you can't improve if you're constantly reactivating this condition and crashing. So I do, in my day-to-day life, do everything I can. I use my scooter when I'm out and about walking, because one of my biggest triggers is walking. I can't. It sends me straight off into a crash. So around the house, I walk slowly and carefully. Outside the house, I've given up trying, because I know I just can't do it. I'll pace my activities. I've given up over 3/4 of my work, just so that I can now pace, do no more than a couple of hours of work every couple of days. I mean, it's that bad. So I'm very strict in that sense. But I have to still live my life. And this is where the balance comes in, because your mental health and your physical health affect one another. And I already have quite complex mental health challenges as it is. I have long-standing problems with depression and anxiety, which are now very well managed, but are affected by, I've got hypothyroidism and I've got ME, and these really do affect your mental health. So if I don't go out and live my life, my mood lowers. If my mood lowers, my ME gets affected by my immune system, my nervous system, and so on. And it's this constant feedback loop. So when I was debating this whole thing about Glastonbury, I mean, I knew there was no way that I could go and just wander around the festival and try and put my tent up and all of that. I had a wake up call and went, "What are you doing, Finn? You cannot do this." No. But then I thought, okay, perhaps I could get someone, a friend, to come in and put up my tent, and then I can just sit near my tent and try. And worst case scenario, that same friend, hopefully Chris, could come and pick me up and take me home. As it was, I managed to get the disability access. Now, I said all along that if we get there and I can't manage it, I'll come home. Because for me, I wanted to at least try, because at least if I tried, I would feel better than having never tried. My mental health would have taken such a knock had I not done it. But I did manage it, and the effect on my mental health and well-being for doing that festival, even at the incredibly pared down way I did it compared to my usual way, has done me the power of good. So whilst physically I'm struggling, mentally I'm doing really well at the moment. And I think this is something that often people can find really hard to understand. And I think when you struggle with mental health difficulties, I think when you struggle with any kind of mental or physical health difficulties, you learn to separate stuff. Because a lot of people, when things go wrong, everything's wrong. But actually, more than one thing can be true. And I've learned that it's possible to hold a good thing and bad thing in both hands, and for them both to exist, and for it both to be okay, if that makes sense. And I've learned that, luckily. So the same is true now. I know that I'm really good mentally, but pretty darn crap physically right now. Both things are true, both exist in the same space, and I'm okay, so it's not like I've got to go, oh, it's all bad. Does that make sense? So this is why sometimes I do things, it's like feel the fear and do it anyway, but this is risk the PEM and do it anyway. But I always weigh up, is this really going to benefit me? And I never do anything where I'm pushing through. That is dangerous. If I push through, then I do risk my health. So even with Glastonbury, I managed to put lots of things in place. So when I do choose things that I know are going to give me some payback, a crash, some post-exertional malaise, I make sure that I have put as much in place as possible to limit that payback as much as I physically can. Like with Glastonbury, I had the help on site. So we bought all the equipment we needed to wheel stuff on site, and Christopher did all that, bless him. We had a minibus that took all our equipment onto the disabled campsite. We had stewards on hand to help put up our tents. There were buses to the main stages if we needed. I hired a scooter. After the failed attempt at trying to show Chris around the site on what I thought would be a quiet day on the Thursday, we gave up and stayed on the access platforms and didn't move. I slept. And this is the thing, you see on social media me having a good time doing this, that and the other, you think I'm great. But there was much sleeping that went on in between sets. And often during sets, I get so fatigued at times that I would sleep even though there was a drill going on. So there was lots of sleeping in between sets and during sets to kind of, when I was just exhausted or when I needed to nap, So I did lots of that, put that in place. And we weren't getting out of bed till about 10 in the morning. We were in bed kind of 11 o'clock at night rather than my normal 3 or 4 in the morning, So yes, I have to still keep on living my life and risking PEM, but in a balanced way. I don't push through with my work in this way, only with my leisure life. I wouldn't push through with a deadline or with anything like that, because I think that kind of pushing through stress is different than pushing through. I mean, I wouldn't call it pushing through when you're having fun, but I mean, uh, even at Glastonbury, when I was like, oh, I really want to do this, but I was still thinking, actually, I can feel that this isn't great. The only time we did push through, I'll tell you, is on the Sunday night when we wanted a fish finger sandwich and we were so tired, but I went, look, come on, let's just get this fish finger sandwich. And we were exhausted and we probably shouldn't have done what we did. But anyway, but yeah, this is why sometimes I think it's worth risking that payback, and why I do sometimes, just for the effect of my mental health, because ultimately then it is helping me really in the long run, you know. And it's the same with moving, because people said, oh my goodness, you're going to Glastonbury and then you're coming back and moving. Well, that was just because this is, you're seeing part of the new home behind us. That was just because we found this wonderful house at an incredible price with this wonderful garden in this really quiet area that was just a bargain one-off, and we had to do it. But it was short-term pain for long-term gain. And again, that was the thing with PEM. I had to weigh up, it's going to be worth it to have a crash for a few weeks, hopefully just a few weeks, to then have this home. Do you see what I'm saying? So this is why I deal with PEM two ways. I avoid it as much as I possibly can, but then sometimes I think, in this circumstance, I've got to just say there's going to be some post-exertional malaise happening, and it's just got to be that way in order to benefit my mental health, self-esteem, life, and me and Chris's life, so that we can still go and do stuff together. I actually do think if I waved my arms less, I'd probably have more energy. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, that was what I wanted to talk about today, and we got there in the end in a very roundabout way. And I still haven't thought of the name of this type of post-exertional malaise I really wanted to talk about. Rolling PEM, that's it. So it's basically where you start to get really fatigued, but you pull it back by resting, but you don't quite rest enough. So then you get a little bit more fatigue, but you rest again and you put it back. But then, and repeat, and then eventually you get a really big crash, but it's then weeks after the initial event. And I've heard people call this rolling PEM. So it's even later than the normal PEM, but what it is, it's accumulative over time. Does that make sense? So I've seen this happen with me a few times, and I can't find much about this anywhere, but it does make sense to me that I have spent lots of time recovering. I've been very well behaved and very good and done the proper rest and all of that, but clearly not enough over these last 6 weeks, that now my body's gone, right, you've not rested enough in these last 6 weeks, so now you're going to have an extra delayed crash. Here you go. Have some fatigue, have some pain. I've got some weird pain going on with my arm right now. It's a new thing. Fred has introduced this new weird pain. Here we go. But yeah, rolling PEM. There we go. So, this has been a Finn Waffle this week, brought to you by a very confused, sweaty, muddled-headed Finn this week. Thank you very much for bearing with me and for your patience and for your love of me with my rough edges. Now, there was a question I was going to ask you. I think it was this one. If it wasn't, then I'll have to put it in the comments. But yes, it was this one. I was going to ask, I've said thank you, haven't I, for your lovely comments. Thank you. I wanted to also ask, a member of our Friends of Finn club suggested that we might want to do some pre-recorded Q&As. And it is a really good idea. It might be a really nice way for me to kind of chat about lots of random stuff without having to worry too much about sticking to certain topics and just chatting randomly. So if you do have any questions you want to send in, then please do send them in. I mean, I know I haven't really said much about Glastonbury access stuff because I just wanted to vlog my experience rather than teaching you about what it was all about. So if you have questions about that, send them in. Questions, just send them in. Just give me something to talk about, to waffle to you about for 20 minutes. It's going to be a long one this week. Love you. Have a good week, rest of week, whenever you get to see this, Finn, stop it. Good, bye. I'm going. Right. Love you. Bye.